Brogan, Private Dick, The Names We Bury. Boston, 1988. The brownstone was quiet except for the ticking grandfather clock and the low hum of the radiator. Brogan sat at his desk with his feet up, flipping through an old high school yearbook that a client had dropped off that morning. The client was Margaret Maggie O'Donnell, not his Maggie, but close enough in name to make his chest tighten. She was 71 now, silver hair pinned neatly, eyes still sharp. She had come in with a simple request. "Mr. Brogan, my best friend from high school, died in a car accident right after graduation in 1955. Her name was Evelyn Walsh. We were like sisters. I never got to say goodbye properly. I'd like to visit her grave if you can find where they buried her." Brogan took the case for expenses only. Something about the story felt off. He started with the usual: death certificate, newspaper obituary from June 1955, cemetery records. Everything pointed to Evelyn Walsh, 18 years old, killed when the car she was riding in slammed into a tree on Route 1A. Driver survived. Passenger pronounced dead at the scene. But the more Brogan dug, the more the details didn't line up. The obituary listed the wrong middle initial. The death certificate had a social security number that didn't match Evelyn's school records. The surviving driver's statement mentioned the passenger's name as Evelyn, but the hospital intake form had E. Walsh, with no further identification, because the girl had been unconscious. Brogan spent 3 days cross-checking. He pulled old yearbook photos, talked to surviving classmates, and finally tracked down the original police report buried in a storage box in a Southie precinct basement. The truth hit him like a quiet freight train. The girl in the car that night was Evelyn Walsh. It was Evelyn Wilson, a quiet, bookish girl from the same graduating class who looked similar enough in the chaos of the accident that the names got mixed up. The real Evelyn Walsh had been at a different party that night. She had left town 2 weeks later, heartbroken, believing her best friend had died. The hospital had misidentified the unconscious girl because her purse had been destroyed in the crash, and the driver, who was concussed, kept calling her Evie. The wrong name stuck on the paperwork. The wrong family was notified. The wrong girl was buried under Evelyn Walsh's name. The real Evelyn Walsh changed her last name to Vale when she moved to California, got married, had kids, and lived a quiet life believing her best friend had been killed in that crash. The girl buried in the cemetery, the one everyone mourned as Evelyn Walsh, was actually Evelyn Wilson, whose own family had moved away years earlier and never followed up after the initial notification. 2 families, 2 best friends, living in the same city for 33 years, each believing the other had died in 1955. Brogan made the calls. First to Margaret O'Donnell, then to Evelyn Vale, née Walsh, in a quiet suburb outside San Francisco. The reunion happened on a crisp October afternoon in Boston Common, near the Frog Pond. Margaret arrived first, trembling. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes later, walking slowly with a cane, her silver hair catching the light. They saw each other from 20 yards away, and both stopped. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. Evelyn's eyes filled instantly. Then they were running, or as close to running as 2 71-year-old women could manage, straight into each other's arms. They hugged like girls again, sobbing and laughing at the same time, words tumbling over each other. "You're alive. I thought you were gone. All these years. I never stopped missing you." Brogan stood off to the side with Dave on his shoulder and Marmalade sitting regally at his feet. He didn't interrupt. He just watched 2 old friends who had lived parallel lives in the same city, separated by 1 clerical error and 33 years of unnecessary grief. Later, over tea in the brownstone, the full story came out. The wrong ID at the hospital, the driver's concussion, the family's moving away, the quiet assumption that became accepted truth. Margaret turned to Brogan, tears still drying on her cheeks. How did you even think to look? Brogan shrugged, the tired smile on his face. A question was asked. I did the research. Names get mixed up. IDs get swapped. Accidents are messy. Sometimes the dead aren't really dead, and the living have been mourning the wrong person for decades. Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you, Mr. Brogan. You gave me back my sister. Brogan squeezed her hand gently, then let go. Just doing the job, ma'am. Sometimes the job is bringing people back from the grave, even when they never actually left it. Dave chattered softly from the desk. Marmalade flicked his tail once in quiet approval. Outside, Boston kept moving, full of wrong names, buried truths, and the occasional miracle that started with one simple question. Inside the brownstone, two old friends sat talking like no time had passed at all, while the detective who doesn't stop poured himself a single scotch and raised it toward the mantel. To the names we bury, and to the ones who dig them back up.